Hi Laura, how are you?
Hello, I am so good. Thank you for having me today. Really, really excited to be here.
Hi,
Yeah,
Laura.
Alicia, and myself are very delighted that you accepted our invitation to speak in today's discussion, a topic which is very close to all of us and hopefully will enlighten and inspire those who will be watching this video. Laura, we know you're the founder of Women in Funds, which I believe you founded in 2017. Could you tell us more about Women in Funds, the members that you have, the type of events you host, and the overall mission of this organization?
Happy to. So, I'm Laura Schnaidt. I'm the founder of Women in Funds. I'm also an investment management attorney, and I have my own outsourced general counseling firm called Paradox Principles. And Women in Funds has actually been a passion project of mine since 2017, something that I've done in addition to my career as an attorney. As you said, I launched it in 2017. It was very grassroots. We started with a small group of women that met quarterly to talk about our experiences in the funds industry. And it's grown due to demand from women in the industry. We wanted to expand it to include all of the women who want to join. And who we are as a core is a values based member community that is designed specifically for women who work in investment funds. That could be a private equity fund, a hedge fund, a venture fund. You get the picture. The idea is that this is a niche industry that is very different from the broader financial services industry, like working in a bank. And there's just different needs as a woman. Funds tend to be smaller. Often, the woman who works in the fund is the only woman working there. And as you can imagine, this could lead to a number of issues around isolation and not feeling supported with the network. So, our goal was to inspire, connect, and educate these women and increase their visibility to others, amplify their voices, and provide them with a supportive community that I think is really needed to thrive in a career. We have 400 members today. About half are in investing, the other half are in the business of the fund, such as legal, compliance, accounting, or capital raising. And they're spread across mid level and senior roles. And I would say that the majority of our members work in private equity and hedge funds, and the rest are spread among venture, credit, and crypto. So we hold monthly in person events that usually combines something that's fun and social with an educational or inspirational angle, such as an interesting speaker. And every event is totally different, so it never gets boring. We do have some favorite events that we bring back, like our stand up comedy and our compensation negotiations seminar. And then we have a virtual platform as well, which we added after the pandemic, just realizing that women should be connected virtually. We have a chat group, we have a member site, compensation survey, a mentorship program, lots of network connections, and a job board in addition to many other things.
Sounds amazing, especially the stand-up comedy. Definitely
That's
would
my
like to see one of those. Yes. Well, thank you for that. I mean, can you tell us how has Women in Funds progressed over the past few years? And, what do you envision for the future for the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, back when I founded it, it was very grassroots and it's grown just by word of mouth. And as it's grown, we were able to include a larger variety of events to appeal to the many different types of women in the group and build structure. So, we have a junior board, an advisory board, now a formal mentorship program. And all of this has come from our volunteers, who are the women who make up the membership. I think for them, the platform is a way to get leadership experience. Sometimes that's hard if you're in a small company and there isn't a lot of upward progression that's available to you. So we try to create that opportunity for our members. And we really want the community to feel like home. So from the very beginning, I personally interviewed every member, either in person or on a phone call. And I still endeavor to do that today, because even though we've grown in numbers, I want to maintain that really personal feel to the group so that it's like you're just with a group of your friends. And that's the safety net that we're trying to bring in and keep. So I think as we grow, we're going to definitely keep that. That's the core of our organization. And we're just going to add resources and capabilities for our members.
It's amazing. Can you discuss any initiatives within the organization that have had a significant impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we always are trying to launch new initiatives that make sense for our members. This comes from member feedback as to what they're interested in. So we've had a lot of feedback about mentorship. And although we've had informal mentorship for years, just through the community, we wanted to launch a formal program. So at the beginning of this year, we put together a committee. Some of the women on the committee are actually very experienced at building these mentorship programs in huge organizations like Millennium. And so they brought their experience and built a program for women in funds. And we matched 10 mentors and mentees this year. It's a 6-month pilot program, and it's been very successful so far. At the end of it, we're going to make any tweaks we need to and then formalize it into a recurring program and hopefully be able to offer it to many more than. And I think this is really important because, believe it or not, it's not just younger people who need mentorship. Many of the people who signed up to be mentees actually are founders of funds. So you can be pretty far along in your career and still need help and support. And that's what we're trying to do here, is connect women with the right resources. So I'm very proud of that. We also launched a new program this year called Power Lunch, which is a recurring series on women and money, personal finance. Also an important topic. And so we have a really wonderful member who's a financial advisor, Natalie Brixon, and she runs that series and offers all sorts of great tips, support, advice. And we basically brainstorm in a very comfortable setting over Zoom to talk about money and planning. So I think that's, definitely one of my favorites. And then our next upcoming initiative, which is not launched yet, is a series on wellness. That is a huge part of a long career. And I think understanding all of the different facets of wellness and how you tie it into work are really, really important for just feeling satisfied with what you're doing.
Right. And we've definitely attended the power lunch, past and really enjoyed it. Thinking about these things right until somebody actually right, in front of you and, have this account, are you thinking about wills? Are you thinking about this? And so it was very, very helpful.
Yeah. And I think everyone, who comes on these, they're in different stages, right? Some people are taking care of aging parents. Others are new parents and they're starting to think about putting a will together.
Right.
And what's nice is you have the collaborative nature of the gathering. You have people from different backgrounds saying, actually, I dealt with that. And, here's a referral to someone I used who was good for a will. And that's the power of the network.
Since you mentioned Natalie, she's the very reason why we're here today. It was really just a conversation we had about me asking if she knows of any women organizations out there, and then she connected the both of us. Fast forward, here we are having this discussion, which is really great. And I thank you for what you do to the community. But we also want to know what inspired you to pursue a career in financial services, and how has your journey evolved within it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for asking. I would say my biggest inspiration, there's a lot of inspirations, but my biggest one is definitely my mom, who had a very long and successful career in commercial real estate finance. And I grew up watching her navigate her career and listening to her talk about work, seeing her go on business trips. And it always seemed really exciting to me. And I just wanted to be like her when I grew up, working on deals and making money. And I saw how much she loved her work. She would always, talk about it at home with entertaining stories about real properties she restructured, the developers, the borrowers. And she also went into the math and the financial details of the financings. So she really wanted to teach me, and I could see that, my mom really likes her work. So that definitely inspired me. And I think I did see her face adversity during her career, which was probably a result of being a woman in a very male dominated industry, which real estate is. And I have to say that my mom never gave me an impression that you couldn't do this because you were a woman. She never ever instilled that in me. So I always thought it was possible to go into finance. And she also taught me that you really have to love what you do. So you can't just get hung up on money or prestige, which I think is kind of easy to do in this industry. So she always encouraged me to find jobs that were challenging to me and interesting to me intellectually, and to learn as much as possible. So that's actually influenced me a lot, because I have not stayed at a company for like 20 years. I've worked at a lot of different places. And really, what's behind that was my mom encouraging me to keep learning. So if I felt like I was stagnating in a job or in a role and I wasn't learning anymore, I knew that I needed to make a change and find something that would challenge me. And so, I think she's shown me that you can make your own path. You don't have to follow what everyone else has done. And I think she's also been very direct with me about not putting up with nonsense. So that's helped me as far as if I have faced, like what many women may face in the workplace, whether it's bullying or discrimination or microaggressions or just, put downs or roadblocks. My mom's been an incredible sounding board when I have faced headwinds, and just said, like, just push through it. Like, don't let this stop you. And this is not you, it's them. And so having that has really inspired me to just keep pushing. And I think what that's helped me see is just how much women face as far as these headwinds. Like, it's not personal. It's really more about how women are perceived in society and in the workplace. And that's why I think women should not be discouraged, because it's not about personal failings. It's about just where we are in society. And so what I really was inspired by, and what my mom has taught me, is that you just have to keep pushing yourself to be better and to not give up. So most recently, the best advice she's given me is to go and work for myself and pursue what I'm good at and what I love, instead of just working harder and harder and harder at something that's draining my energy. And I think that advice really helped me figure out what I want to do now and what I need to do to sustain myself in a long career. So I think that is, you have to find something that energizes you and that you love. And whatever that is, that's your inspiration. That's what you should work on.
That's right. I mean, so well put. And speaking of advice, right, that was going to be our next question: is what advice would you give to women who aspire to enter this industry, right, and want to succeed?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I think no woman should be afraid to enter this industry. It doesn't matter that there's not a lot of women. We're working on that, and it's not going to be like that forever. The reason there's not a lot of women is just because of habit, and because people aren't used to seeing women doing this work. Women are 100% capable of doing this work, and very, very well. So it's just a matter of time before everyone realizes that. So I think women should plan to get started on the career path and plan for a long career, but be ready for twists and turns, which are inevitable. And that means that you don't have to stay on the same path, or maybe a path you thought in your 20s was going to be the right thing for you. You have to be flexible and able to pivot. And life throws a lot of things in your way, but you don't let that stop you. You just keep going. So I think really the message is, you don't need to meet other people's expectations or seek external validation. You really need to find satisfaction in your work from the inside. And I think that the money comes, if you're not putting the money first, that's fine. You don't have to. I think there's probably a belief that you always need to go for the money first. And I think that's probably a falsehood. I think you should go for what you enjoy and figure out the money second. At least that's what I've learned. And the other thing I think women should know who are at the start of their career is, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to fail. It could be like a big fiery crash, but that's fine. You can just pick yourself back up, and you just put yourself back together and figure out what the next thing is. That's part of working. And I think women are often trying not to fail. So They're, avoiding taking risk and avoiding looking stupid, avoiding going into things where they're not 100% confident they know how to do it. And I have to say, I see men boldly marching into things all the time that they definitely don't 100% know how to do. And I want to encourage more women to do that as well. I think that being overly cautious can be an impediment, and it can lead to unhappiness and a feeling of dissatisfaction. That doesn't really make for a happy life. So that basically is, don't settle. Having some, risk taking appetite, some self knowledge of yourself. You have to know your boundaries, but still, you should be pushing yourself and getting into the trenches, challenging yourself, working hard, never settling, because a career is a relationship. And so we all know you have to work on relationships. You have to work on your career, which includes investing time and understanding what makes you tick. And, that can change over time.
Your very great advice, Laura. If I may just add, women are very strong. We'll just have to find that within us. And it's nice that we have this community now of women that you could connect, that you could have a discussion with, that could mentor you. Because, like, as I've attended a lot of your events, I've learned so much. I've met so much individuals who are in the same situation as I am, and whatever the experiences they have, I'm actually learning from them as well. So it's nice to have all of this, but what advice could you give organizations in our industry that could better support the advancement of women?
It's such a good question and such a hard question. Every organization is different. So you can have a big corporation with a lot of redundancy, and that's going to look very different from a startup where there's absolutely no overlap in what people do, and you're not going to have the sort of programs that a larger company would have. So what I really believe in is women going out on their own to launch funds, because capital is power. The reason why women don't have a lot of power right now is because they have less capital than men. The men are the ones who, manage all of these big funds that manage trillions of dollars. And the women are not in the roles where they get to make decisions over that capital and how it's used. And that comes to bear on, if you're a female and you own a company, you can decide whether you want to give a woman a chance and invest in her. Maybe you understand better. So I think we need to get women into more of these positions where they're in a position of power and in a position to allocate capital. And that's really how things will change.
So thank you. Mhm. How do you see the role of women in the financial services industry evolve over the next, 5 to 10 years?
So I think that there's been a democratization within the financial industry, which is good. So you kind of see this with like meme stocks and Robinhood, and even a bit in crypto. I don't think it's a bad thing that there's been a shift in perception about who's allowed into the capital markets, who's allowed to be an investor, and what can they look like. And we need to diversify who is in charge of money. So, as far as we've known it, it's like a guy, and that's who runs banks and other huge asset managers. And we associate man with the person who's in charge of money. So, I think as there's democratization of the capital markets, which is already happening and underway, and you start giving access to the types of returns you find in funds for retail investors, which is actually happening, you're going to see more interesting things where less traditional people will be launching funds, like women. And the more of that happens, the more things can really start to change exponentially. You'll have women investing in other women, so females will actually get their companies funded. And I think that this is really important because of the broken ladder, the broken rung on the ladder. We all know there's a glass ceiling. It's not just about a glass ceiling, there's a broken rung. Women are just like dropping out of the workforce when they're midway through their careers. So if we can funnel those women who are just saying, okay, there's no way through, if we can get them to launch their own funds, that's wonderful, because then we're taking all of that talent that would otherwise be lost and putting it to work. And so I'm really hopeful that that can happen in the next few years.
Same here. Hoping that it happens in the next 5 to 10 years, and I'm pretty much sure it's going to be a great community, even better for all of us, and for all the women who will be starting in the industry. I think you briefly touched on it, but what challenges do women in the financial services industry face today, and how can it be addressed?
So I really think it's the same challenges that women in my mother's generation faced, which is basically there's a lack of sufficient childcare, there's a lack of proper maternity leave, women are not being promoted because they're being perceived as not committed enough to work, which is called the motherhood penalty. And then there's just like a lack of inclusion and equity. So you don't get a seat at the table. And I think that's women get discouraged. One of the reasons I launched Women in Funds was because I was starting to look around and see how discouraged women were. So tired and just like over it. You know, basically like you're working really hard and you're getting nowhere. That's really demoralizing. So I wanted to create something that was just positive and tried to bring women together in a way that would inspire them and help them innovate. And I think the challenge that we have is there's just not enough women at the top of organizations. So you have younger and mid-level women looking up and seeing, okay, there really aren't any women there. And you have women who graduate in record numbers from colleges, law schools, and business schools, but then where do they go? Because they're obviously not getting up to the top of the organization. So that's, to me, that's really, really a big challenge because it's like a brain drain. You have half the population and they're just kind of being left on the sidelines. And I think we need to solve this as a society. I don't know that it's, any one employer who can fix it. Like I said, I think it's an attitude shift, but we have to fix childcare. We have to make that more affordable and accessible. And I think that we don't need to fix women. My big message on this is the challenge that women face has nothing to do with who they are or their characteristics. And there's nothing that women should be doing to change themselves because we didn't do anything wrong. It's the workplace that needs to be restructured and society's attitudes about women.
I agree 100%. Well, what trends are you currently seeing in the industry? And, how do you think the role of women will impact it?
Yeah. So I've been seeing this a lot, actually, which is women who are taking the initiative of forming their own informal investment coalitions. And it's sort of cool because I think for a long time, men have gotten together in kind of informal club deals. They found interesting investment opportunities and shared it with their friends. And women really weren't doing that for whatever reason. And I've started to hear more and more, constantly fielding calls from women telling me about these efforts. They're getting together with their friends and finding investments, and they're investing in women. And it's not through a formal fund. It's just through like an SPV, and they're just writing checks however they can. And I think that's really cool because the problem we have is women are not funded, right? We're saying, okay, venture capital is not funding women, and that means that women entrepreneurs can't get their start. Great. So we can go to angel investing, which is something women can do in these informal coalitions. And I think the other thing you can do, you can extrapolate from this, and I'm starting to see more of this, is these manager seeding platforms where women are actually going out and saying, I'm going to build a platform because I want to seed female fund managers who need to get a start. They need a track record. You can't really get anywhere in this industry if you don't have a track record of your investing. It's really hard to raise capital because investors will rightfully say, how do I know I can trust you with my money? Where's your track record? So what these platforms are doing is giving an opportunity to these people to just invest get a track record together. And from there, it's a launch pad. And then they can go out to more institutional investors and raise money. So I think that's really interesting. And I think you're going to see more of that. It's kind of existed to an extent over the past couple of years, but I would say more as like an incubator. And I think you'll see more people who are actually putting funds together, like funds of funds, and that's just going to grow. So I think that's wonderful. And I think very beneficial to women, obviously.
Right. That does sound amazing, and I do hope it grows, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree because we've seen, even with the work, we've seen a lot of women-led startup funds over the years, which we haven't seen much in the past. Just to follow up, since we're having this, women-led funds now, how is the industry as a whole adapting to the growing demand for sustainable and socially responsible investing?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think overall there is an appetite, a pretty big appetite actually, to invest without harming our earth and the people who live on it. So I have no bone to pick with that idea. I mean, that's great. And I think most people would agree it's a great idea. It has to be executed properly for it to work. And I think that's where we are now is people are sorting out, okay, how do you execute on this idea? Regulators are very interested in it as well, because you don't want to give misleading claims to your investors, holding yourself out in the wrong way. So there's a lot to be done there as far as how do you classify and how do you rate if you are going to rate. But there's definitely a growing demand, which shows that there is change happening on the societal level where investors are just expecting more from their investors. They're saying, okay, if I'm going to give money to this fund, I expect a return, but I also expect you not to hurt others when you're investing. That's the base, sort of the baseline. And then you go up the spectrum and it's not just that you're not hurting, you're actually helping. You're making a positive impact on the earth. So it's not really a radical idea. But I think we're still in the infancy of it and we'll work out the kinks of it. But there's really nowhere to go but up, I think. It's just it's a positive thing.
Thank you. So, one of our last question is, where do you see this industry go, in the next few years? And how would you like the women in funds to be part of that journey going forward?
Love this question. So, of course, none of us can predict the future. But if I were to look into my crystal ball, I think what I see is that investors, that is capital allocators, will be taking more of an interest in single manager funds. Over the past few years, there's been a lot of movement to pod shops and just larger asset managers. But I think there is some movement towards the single managers again. That's great for women because women can launch their own fund and get funded. And I think we're also going to see more opportunities for retail investors to put their money into the private funds market and get exposure through newly invented products. There's some imaginative products out there that make the industry more accessible to those who are outside of those traditional channels, where you have to write a $5 million check. I would really love for women in funds to take part in the growth of this manager seeding platform type growth. I think that's really interesting. It's really innovative. It gives an opportunity for women to meaningfully participate and lead. And I think there's probably some, synthesis where women in funds can get involved there. So that would be the next thing that we're looking to do. And I'm already talking with people and figuring out how to execute on that. But I think that the world is our oyster. So we should just continue to proceed with lots of hope and optimism. And, as Kamala says, don't look back.
That's right. Well, thank you for that, Laura. I mean, it was great chatting with you today, learning more about you and what you do with Women in Funds. Beyond grateful to be able to be involved with this organization. And we're very excited to see, what it's about to host in the future and all the events that you're going to be, hosting and letting us be part of it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. It was really my pleasure to be here today.